welcome back to Melius Performance Podcast. Today I am joined by Dr. Adam Fletcher. Dr. Adam Fletcher is a returning guest. If you would wish to listen to the first episode with Adam, just scroll down there to the show notes, click on that link or search that episode and you can download that episode before listening to this. If not, you can listen to this. It is a standalone episode, so we hope you enjoy it. As always, go to meliusconsulting.com.au to find out more about Melius Consulting. If you have a free moment and you'd like to, we'd really appreciate a review on iTunes or a podcast app, wherever you listen to them. Any reviews will be helpful. And as always, you can contact me at ian.dunican@meliusconsulting.com.au. In this episode, Dr. Adam Fletcher and I discussed his new app called Peak Alert. This is a really interesting app. In a day with a market that's saturated by apps, is this one good? Can it add any benefit? What's the uses? Is it used for athletes, industry? What can it do? What can't it do? We discuss all of this and more in this episode. Welcome back to Melius Performance Podcast. Today I am joined by Dr. Adam Fletcher again. Wait now, Adam. Recently on your LinkedIn it says CEO and adjunct professor. So am I supposed to call you professor now or doctor? What would you like to be called?
As would always be the case with you and me, Ian, you could call me Adam. But thanks for checking.
I could have called you worse.
You probably have. Hopefully my favourite.
So, Adam, for the listeners who may not have checked out your previous podcast with us back in the early stages when I was Sleep for Performance Radio, well, if you want to pause now, you can just scroll down to the show notes where we've linked the episode. You can go back and listen to Adam there. But for those who want to listen to this episode, Adam, can you give us just a quick 2-minute overview background on your kind of education and work experience, please?
Yeah, so my initial training was really as a research scientist focusing on human sleep. I was very interested in the physiological body systems that are relevant for sleep, but also the psychological context, because obviously things like stress and other psychological factors can really influence our sleep as well. And eventually I did my Ph.D. to specifically investigate how do you measure and predict human performance, particularly in businesses that operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So safety critical industries in particular, mining, oil and gas, healthcare, airlines, logistics, etc. And I worked as a research scientist for a couple of universities. I eventually worked as a research psychologist for the US Army based in Washington, DC. And then back in 2006, I moved back to Australia and launched my company, Integrated Safety Support. And really since then, my team and I have been trying to convert or translate the science and the medicine of occupational alertness, fatigue management, shift work management into something that's actually practical and useful. So we do contract research, but the majority of our efforts is really trying to translate the complexity from the science and the medicine into something useful to identify risks, manage risks, and things like that.
Yeah. No worries. So, Adam, over the last couple of years, you've like you say, been working in this area, and recently you've launched an app called Peak Alert. So this app is out now in a day where we're saturated with apps, wrist-worn technology, all sorts of novel devices. What made you want to get into the business of sort of launching an app? What was your kind of catalyst into that? Because it is a kind of a saturated field, and there is a spectrum of really crap products out there to decent products.
Yeah, look, it was really something that our clients were calling on us to do. I was very resistant in the early years when those discussions were happening, and people would come to me almost weekly asking about different sleep apps or sleep tracking apps or fatigue prediction apps. And yeah, frankly, the vast majority of them, especially at that time, were junk. And so mostly I was just batting people away saying, it's junk. I've looked into it. There's nothing behind it. But eventually, clients sort of wore me down. And we originally started with a very simple app, which is also available. We've got two apps at the moment. One is called Fatigue Safe, and the other one is called Peak Alert. So the Fatigue Safe one, which is the simpler one, that's really just a 1-minute personal self-assessment to help people really reflect within themselves as to whether they're showing signs and symptoms of fatigue, and then getting a clear category with actionable items that falls out the back end of it. But the Peak Alert app, which you've asked about, that's definitely more sophisticated. It's actually something that's linked to the work that I was doing at Walter Reed with the US Army, because there's actually a significant heart to the Peak Alert app is actually a piece of intellectual property that we've licensed from the US Department of Defense. And it's effectively an individualized algorithm that learns about the user through their smartphone. And that learning can happen both from you doing like 3-minute reaction time tests into the app, but you can also automatically link it or manually add sleep data through, Apple Health Kit, Google Fit, and actually allow it permission to learn about you in terms of your sleep and performance, and actually build up some fairly personalized predictions about your own performance, which is great if you're needing to stay safe, great if you're a high performance person and you want to do things when you're at your peak. And it can also help you optimize timing for caffeine and things like that to really get you to your peak alertness, hence the name Peak Alert.
Yeah. Let's just back up for a second, Adam. The first app you spoke about, Fatigue Safe. What exactly, what's the purpose or the objective of that app, and how can people use that?
Yeah, so Fatigue Safe is really intended to be a self-assessment process. Some would say self-assessment, some might say subjective, but it's really a reflection within myself. So it has a very simple set of questions that really anchors my awareness within myself in terms of, what sleep I've had, the quality of that sleep, whether I've very recently shown signs and symptoms of sleepiness or fatigue, to really just ground myself in my own self-awareness so that I can make a better informed decision about, should I complete this safety critical task I've just been asked to do? Or I might be thinking about the fact that because I slept terribly last night, that maybe I'm not safe to drive to work to take on a shift that I'm actually rostered for. And so really the intent of it is to try and trigger sensible conversations that don't normally happen. If we can help people self-identify that perhaps they're not at the level of alertness they need to be to do a task safely, then we're hoping that it triggers a conversation between that person and their supervisor or that person and their manager, rather than just assuming that everything will be fine and learning about things after mistakes happen. So we're really just trying to help people be more proactive and have more proactive conversations in the workplace to manage risks as they're identified, rather than just assuming and carrying on, assuming everything's fine.
Yeah. So now we're kind of heading into the Christmas period, and with airline travel not being so prevalent as it was before, people may be driving longer distances and so on. So anybody can kind of download this app, and even before they drive on an 8-hour drive, on holidays down the coast, wherever they're going, they can fill this in and go, oh, okay, this is my kind of current state, or after 4 hours they can do it again. So from an individual perspective, they can use the app in that capacity. Or if it's in a business, somebody can use it on the way to work or when they start work, or even a supervisor could use it to initiate a conversation with a potentially fatigued employee at, let's say, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Fatigue Safe app is a free app. We make it available to anyone who wants to use it effectively. So, yeah, for people that potentially have driver fatigue because of long distance driving, people that are working, especially if they're working long hours or out of the normal Monday to Friday 9 to 5, then yeah, absolutely, it's a resource people can find on both the app stores and use it for free. Yeah, we do have.
That's called Fatigue Safe.
Fatigue Safe, all one word, no space in the middle.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have like sort of corporate dashboard layers as well for corporate clients, but for individual users, it's freely available. And our aim is to always make it available for free to anyone who would like to use it.
Oh, excellent. So when you talk about the corporate clients or the corporate dashboards, so for example, if you got a company that let's say has 5 teams, 20 people in each team, and you're a managing director or manager of that area, you could then see an aggregated view of those 5 teams and what's happening on a daily basis, the frequency, the potential time of day, all this data will be available.
Yeah, exactly. The data's quite simple, and we can slice and dice it however a particular client needs it. I mean, if they want to look at an aggregate across everyone, that's obviously easy. If they want to stratify it by geography or team or even time of day or type of shift, I mean, they're all pretty basic filters. And, we can set up the dashboard with those sorts of customizations based on, what a particular client needs.
Yeah, that's quite good because, in industry applications where people have filled in these forms, kind of similar to like a Take 5 or a pre-start safety checklist, in high-risk industries, you see people sometimes being asked to, enter those manually into a system or an Excel sheet, and then people try to drag it together. It gets quite cumbersome. It's costly, it's time-consuming, and it's frankly just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So this system is really nice where it's dragging it live every time.
Exactly. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you can avoid those disincentives, and a lot of the time it is a process disincentive if it's just too hard. So we really want the data. Well, firstly, we really want the feedback from the app to the user to be valuable. We have a real resistance to giving people things to do that they don't actually get some sort of benefit from. So we're actually aiming for it to be personally valuable, to give the person a clear reflection of their own state based on their own assessment. And we find that if we can make it quick and easy and largely automated, and people are getting immediate feedback and value, they're going to want to use it just for their own purposes. Yeah. The fact that there's corporate data and corporate intelligence building up through the aggregate, from our point of view, that's a flow-on benefit if you can get the user experience for the actual individual users right.
And I presume, Adam, in a day where people are worried about, people are worried about COVID apps and worried about people sharing their data and so on. And, that's a discussion of itself on privacy, and people can debate that all they want offline of this one. But in a corporate setting, I presume all that data is de-identified and you're just looking at trends by team or by time of day, like you said.
Correct, yeah. At this point in time, we actually can't even identify individuals if we wanted to. So we've actually hard-coded it currently so that it's not possible to have that. Yeah. Not because of anything we would ever intend to do with it, but just eliminates a whole bunch of risks. Now, potentially in the future, we can revisit that and perhaps have some more sophisticated controls where people are willing to give permission for certain amounts of data. But right now, we've just defaulted to a very conservative view, which is that we can't get that information even if we wanted to.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so Fatigue Safe app, and it's great that it's free. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes, and people can just download that and play around with it themselves, either for individual use, or try it at work or show your mates, and it's a good thing to share around.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're always improving it. So if people have got feedback and ideas or features they'd love to see, please feel free to reach out to me or any of my team, because we're really wanting to perpetually make it better.
Yeah, just a note on apps as well. Like, I think it's really important before people download apps and use them. Adam is not advocating, I certainly haven't before in any podcast or any sort of work, that this will cure fatigue or this will be a substitute. It's just generating information for yourself to guide your own improvement. Yep. This is not an intervention-based app. And I think that's really important because so many people, and I'm sure, Adam, you get the same thing. People come to you and go, I've been using this app for like 35 days, my sleep's getting worse, or I'm using this watch and it's, getting no improvement. Well, it's only a measurement tool, so whether it be objective or self-reported. So again, word of caution on apps, they're not gonna solve everything for you.
No, I can't really add to that. You're absolutely spot on.
I just don't want people ringing you up and going, this app doesn't work, Adam. I'm still fatigued. Now, another app that may actually prove to help with interventions is this next app that you've spoken about, Peak Alert. So it's on your business website, integrate safety support. So there's obviously some information on there. You can get the links, and again, we'll put them in the show notes. But can you give us a bit of a background, Adam, on the science that underpins the Peak Alert app?
Definitely. So we were just talking about Fatigue Safe, which is really that self-assessment or subjective analysis of how I'm feeling. Peak Alert is in a very different category. So it's actually not influenced by how I feel at all. It's only about how I'm actually performing objectively in the app, but also what information I'm feeding into the algorithm relating to my sleep pattern, which we can capture automatically as data if you give us permission to pull the information out of the Apple Health Kit or Google Fit, or you can manually enter your sleep in. And also your caffeine. So again, you can have default times when you have caffeine, or you can manually enter when you have caffeine. But the actual base algorithm that sits inside it is something that we have licensed from the US Department of Defense. As far as I'm aware, we're still the only organisation in the world to be granted permission to use that IP and use that algorithm. It is their current cutting edge capability in this space. It's got an artificial intelligence heart. It learns about the individual. The algorithm changes based on what the algorithm learns about that individual. And really all of the other technologies in this space that are in commercial availability in the world do not have access to this particular version of the technology. Any of them that are similar are all on a previous generation, or perhaps in some cases a couple of generations ago. So it really is the cutting edge personal performance measurement, personal performance prediction at an individual level that the US Department of Defense has. Obviously, we're mainly using it for civilian or non-military applications, but certainly we've been having a lot of uptake in fairly paramilitary kind of businesses like emergency services, ambulances and things like that, or search and rescue or emergency response, helicopter operations. So there's a lot of businesses that are more like government agencies, but they sort of almost operate as if they're paramilitary. So we've certainly had a lot of interest and uptake from those, as well as some other industries like healthcare, where there's been a huge amount of system pressure this year because of COVID, and a lot of the resource pools have been pretty lean. So the people left are getting stretched and fried at times, and so we've been able to use this sort of app to just help orientate where people are and help educate people individually, but also get richer data and richer communications happening within teams so that the system itself can stay safer and more resilient.
Yeah. And so again, Adam, like with the Fatigue Safe app, is this for individuals and groups as well, or just individuals?
Yeah, it's available for both individuals and corporates, and similar in a way to Peak Alert. So because we have to pay for the IP that we're using from Department of Defense, we do have a low cost subscription on Peak Alert. It's not very much. It's last time we set it up, I think it was in US dollars, I think it's about $4.50 per year. I think there's a monthly subscription option of like $1 a year, $1 a month or something, but the cheapest option by far is the annual subscription, which is like $5 or something like that.
Just right now on the website, it just says on the Apple's iStore, it says $4.49 US or for a year, or 99 cents a month. So in Australian dollars terms, it's probably $6 for the year, $6.50. It's price of a fancy coffee, as to say.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're keeping the price as low as we can given our actual cost base. And look, we might have enough scale in the future that we can actually make this product available for free like our other one. I mean, that's, in my view, that would be the ideal. I would love to have a setup where our base offerings are actually available to anyone who wants to use them and gets value from them. But similarly to Peak Alert, we're progressing the corporate dashboard. So, this is something we're working with a few foundation clients with at the moment so that they can evolve exactly what customizations they need. But there's not like a really, really rich dashboarding business analytics capability at the moment. We're sort of starting with some fairly basic functions we think everyone will use, but we're definitely open to working with partners to really build better customizations that are going to give better intelligence to be able to monitor groups and performance, and ideally be identifying risk exposures before they become an issue. Yeah.
All right. So let's if you don't mind, let's work through maybe two examples. We'll take an industry example and a sport example.
Great.
So if my name is Billy Bloggs, and I work in a high risk industry such as oil and gas, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I have my breakfast, have a shower. 5:30, I'm ready to go to work because I'm very efficient. How would I be able to use the Peak Alert app at 5:30 in the morning, and what benefit would it give me for my day ahead?
With the example you just mentioned, I'm getting a kind of feeling or a vibe that this person's pretty organised. They've got a set sleep pattern. They know when they need to go to sleep. They know when they're going to get up. In that case, they're probably feeling reasonably fresh and sharp because they're on a pretty clear pattern, pretty clear schedule. So on a normal day, it may well be that they are fine when they wake up and they're fine to get to work, but it's actually through the shift that sometimes they have some troughs or slumps where they're really struggling a bit, especially if the job that they're doing can be quite repetitive and there's not a lot of flexibility in the role. So, a good example might be driving a haul pack, driving a haul truck in a mine. It's a pretty repetitive job. There's not a lot of things I can change about the actual task. And sometimes there's going to be kind of repetitive or boring aspects to a drive, and my brain just might start switching off and things like that. So, in that sort of scenario, then definitely during a break, either a break I ask for or a break that I'm scheduled, I could certainly spend 3 minutes doing a performance test in the app and kind of doing a bit of a check-in to see how I'm going and see whether how I'm feeling lines up with the actual data. That would be one use case. But, if it's someone who's perhaps not as organised or not as routine in their sleep pattern and work pattern, then certainly before they drive to work could be a really valuable time to actually check in with the app and test. Because if I've been on 4 or 5 days off and I've been sleeping until 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning and going to bed at midnight, and then all of a sudden I've got to actually be getting up at 3:30 in the morning to be at work by 5, then the model will be able to track the fact that you're out of sync, you're out of the ideal, and tell you the data, give you the feedback accordingly.
So this is like what we call social jet lag, which we discussed with Miriam Judah a few months ago on the podcast. So this kind of social jet lag or circadian misalignment due to like a shift work pattern. So obviously then the app, Adam, can take in the sleep that the person's had previously or over time. Like you said, the algorithm kind of flexes. It's obviously got some sort of circadian variation. And then it's got this 3-minute reaction time kind of, test that people can do. Is it always 3 minutes or does it go longer, or is it just always a standard 3-minute test?
So the test that's embedded in it, which you can use to increase the training of the app for your data, it's always a 3-minute test. And that's really because of the validations that were done when the original intellectual property and studies were being developed. And look, there's lots of debates in the scientific community about how fast or how short should performance tests be. Traditionally, we'd have 10 or 20-minute tests, and they got very boring and people made a lot of mistakes because they couldn't concentrate. But over time, we've really tried to shorten them up. And I think not in all environments, but in a lot of environments now, I think most people would accept that a 2 or 3 minute test is probably about the minimum you can get to for certain applications. But we just use a 3-minute test. We encourage people to do it when they're fully alert, and we encourage people to do it when they're caffeinated, and we encourage people to do it on days where they know that they're struggling. So we can effectively get these different inputs from alert, caffeinated, fatigued training, and we basically can tag those training sessions with those tags so that we let the algorithm know what kind of training input it is.
And does it make a prediction, Adam, for performance? Is it just a kind of a here and now, this is how my performance is now, or does it make a prediction, 3, 4, 6, 10 hours into the future? So maybe you can plan out those tasks in advance based upon your reaction time, your circadian rhythm, your sleep.
It does both. So it'll give you an immediate response in terms of where am I at right now, and it'll actually make a prediction for the next week. Now, obviously, the further you get into the future, the weaker the accuracy would be, because you don't have your actual sleep times and your actual caffeine times. But if you're someone who's very disciplined, and you do have very consistent sleep times, very consistent caffeine times, then the actual prediction will be pretty accurate, especially once you've trained it with your own data.
Yeah. And would the app then be sensitive enough or clever enough as if it's in there thinking about things like a human? But is it, I suppose, is the machine learning good enough to pick up that, like, let's say every Friday night that, Billy Bags doesn't go to sleep till midnight, but every other day he goes to bed at like 8 o'clock, but Friday night he has a kind of a blowout and he goes drinking or stays up late. Does it learn that over time, that there's certain days of the week or certain times that certain things happen?
No, it's not that smart. I think it's a really good idea because the truth is, like, having done a lot of data analytics on like very different data sets, the thinking behind your question is actually often something that we find. Like when we do really big analyses, we'll often find that like the actual weekend calendar or even a public holiday calendar or school holiday calendar, you can actually find patterns with safety incidents and other things based on time of day, day of week, whether it's school holidays or not. So I think there probably are patterns in that data, but the way it's built at the moment, it's not looking at that level of sensitivity.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking in my mind about rotating shift workers who are going from days to afternoons to nights, followed by a period of time off, as an example. And, different things are going to happen because we're going to constantly have that. But if the app could, learn that. That said, though, it's still really valuable information to have. So when you do the app, when you do the test on the app and it gives you your time now when you're into the future, how do you know whether you're good or bad, depending on the scale or the output? Is it color coded? Does it tell you you're at risk, or how does that work? Because a lot of people say when we provide scientific information, they're like, well, we don't actually know whether that's good or bad. What's the scale? Yeah. How good am I in comparison to other people? And we often kind of have this kind of we think that people have the knowledge already to don't. So how does this make it easy for people to interpret it really quickly without that technical scientific training?
This is something I think as scientists we need to keep working on, because I honestly feel like the simplest we get it to as scientists is still not accessible enough for normal people. So at the moment, we're using a scale that has like your millisecond response times. Now, we do effectively educate people through there's a video that we just uploaded a couple of weeks ago. There's a video that people would watch before they use the app. It's like a 2-minute video. It's part of the onboarding process within the app. And within that, we explain to people that a really, really fast like performance reaction time on this test is about 200 to 250 milliseconds. Once you get to sort of 300 and 350, that's starting to show some signs of impairment. And once you get to like half a second response, then you're really talking about lapses and clearly a failure to respond in a quick time frame. So the short answer to your question is we're looking at millisecond response capability. We help people interpret, what's really good, which would be sort of the 200 to 250 millisecond response average. What's not so good, 300, definitely to 350. But I think we need to get better at doing proper color coding and really try and be, as best we can, more clean and more categorical for people, because scientists are perfectly comfortable with it being a very moving, flexible dynamic. But in the real world, that's too complex for most people to actually work with. So we've got to try and get a bit more categorical, color coded, and improve that even more over time.
Yeah, and particularly like if you're a supervisor or somebody doing a technical job at 4 o'clock in the morning in an environment where it's loud, hot or cold and extreme conditions, you don't be sitting there going, I like the nuance of this curve. If I do this, this and this is how it should be. You just want to be kind of a go or a no-go, so to speak,
Correct. You need something actionable.
Yeah. Actionable, yeah, exactly. Just to automate those. It's a bit like I think Drew Dawson's spoken about this before, and I know from my experience in the military, we used to have this as well. It's called fatigue proofing. Mm-hmm. Things that you just kind of nearly do over and over again that just automatically happen. So at a certain time, if you get like a red, this doesn't happen, or a green, you can proceed, and it's just that.
Exactly. Yeah, and look, in a really mature organisation, we obviously link these with parts of their procedures. So if you get result X, the action you take is Y. If you get result A, you don't need to do any further action. As people build up the skill with it and it becomes more of a mature system, then you can absolutely link it with actionable procedures. Although we normally recommend in the more short to medium term, we normally recommend not getting too procedural or demanding from an organisation point of view. It's better actually just to provide the resource to the staff and basically, give them access, give them privacy assurances because we're not collecting their personal data. Make it very clear that they would have to give permission to even collect data out of their devices, and they can obviously choose to not do that. So we're really just trying to build the trust in the short to medium term. The aim of this really is to deliver value straight back to the user. And, our ethos is that we'll only get the corporate aggregate value flowing if we get enough individual users actually really wanting to use it each day or each work day or whatever it is. So, that's how we approach it.
All right. So in another example, Adam, which we often talk about on this podcast as well, is working with, serious athletes or, either amateur athletes or, Olympians or elite athletes. How might they be able to benefit from such an app when they, might have to go to work during the day, typically like a 9 to 5, train in the evening, train in the morning. They don't know when to train. Can they use this app to maybe make those trade-offs, or, how can this be utilized in sort of high performance sport?
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, it's actually built for high performance people and high performance teams. There's a specific feature in Peak Alert called Optimize. Now, Optimize is where you set a specific window of time where you need to be at your peak. So it might be a 3-hour period from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. in 2 days' time. And you can
Which
actually...
would be representative of like a soccer game or a rugby game on a Friday night during that period. Yeah.
Precisely, yeah. So you might have a very specific period of time that you want to be at your best, and you can effectively hit the optimize button and it'll give you a personalised prediction of what to do. Now, when we educate people about using this tool, we would always encourage that sleep is the primary thing that you're planning. So we really want people to be using it in a way to inform themselves about optimizing their sleep, making a priority of sleep, and really getting as much in the bank or in the tank from their preparation because of sleep, be they anchor sleeps or more napping. But the system itself will also give you caffeine advice. So, on the assumption that you've got the sleep that you've put into the system, it'll also then say, well, if you want to be at your absolute peak at this time for 3 hours, then our recommended caffeine intake for you would be, X milligrams at this time, X milligrams at that time, and really tries to help you get there. Now, that obviously then becomes a decision for that individual. That person might go, well, shit, I don't want to be having 200 milligrams of caffeine at 9 p.m. So, you can obviously take up the advice or not. And sometimes if your peak performance period is just before when you're going to try and get to sleep, you might actually not have the caffeine it recommends, or if it's in the middle of the daytime, or it doesn't really matter how long you're awake after the event, after the game or whatever, then you might take the advice. But it really is set up for those high performance times.
Yeah, so it would take a little bit of education and nuance kind of thinking when you're not going to optimize for training Monday to Thursday. If you're training from 7 to 9, you're not going to be taking 200-300 milligrams of caffeine because you have to go to bed and get up for work the next day, but you're just going to use it specifically for a competitive period when you have a game every 2 weeks, or if you're a martial artist that's a boxer or whatever that's fighting at nighttime, then you're going to use it. But it's not to be used for every single day because you want to because we can't optimize and perform at a max every time in a training session. That should be kept for those competitive periods.
Exactly. And I think anyone who's very serious will already understand this. Anyone who's taking pre-workout supplements or caffeine or other things for training now, you can't use your full stack every single day. Your adrenals might get fried, your endurance might get reduced. I think anyone who's really serious understands that you can't throw everything at every day. You've really got to pick those peak times. So, yeah, it's up to the individual and their constitution and their aims and goals to kind of triangulate all of that. But I think, again, in many ways, the app's built for these sorts of people because it's already trying to help them optimize their sleep, trying to help them optimize their caffeine, and then they can interpret it based on their training and game schedule or match schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a function of age to Adam as well, because I know that some guys in their early 20s or late teens, especially in martial arts, training session is like you're fighting to the death, Right. So where the older ones of us 40 plus are quite happy to give in or take it easy or go home early. So it's a little bit different. So
I think we pick our targets a bit better. It doesn't have to be every day. Yeah.
Hence why I just like going swimming. but there's a good thing, like, because that's a classic example. We were talking before the podcast about swimming, and swimming times are extremely erratic, even at the high levels. And for people like myself being amateurs, just partaking in swimming for personal challenges. As an example, today is Monday. I was up this morning at 4:45 to go swimming at 5:30 to 7 because of pool availability. I will probably swim mid-morning tomorrow. I will swim, Thursday night from 7 to 8:30. And then again on Saturday morning at like 5:30 till 8:30 or something, And that's a massive variation in training times from late evening till early in the morning. So I'm not going to want to be getting up at, 3 a.m. to consume caffeine to be at peak performance for an early morning training session. I'm going to want to maximize my sleep to as much as I can, and then get up and sort of, have my gear ready from the night before, so I can then maximize sleep for a session.
Exactly. And look, whenever we're talking about these sorts of tools, we will always put sleep at the front. It's very easy to get caught up in trying to use stimulants and other things to try and influence our energy levels and things like that. But really, sleep should be the fundamental foundation. I mean, the app definitely is pretty well programmed for caffeine and utilizing caffeine. But we've got to think back to the originating context of the development of this technology. It was for military use, and often you're having fairly significant amounts of caffeine when you're going into a dangerous area, or it's somewhere that you can't stop and nap and rest. Like, oftentimes, it's actually safer to load people up with some caffeine, get them in, get them out, and then worry about their sleep later. Whereas for the vast majority of us, we're not in that context. For the vast majority of us, we should be really focusing on our daily sleep pattern first. And then for those of us that choose to have caffeine, then we're obviously complementing caffeine on top of a really healthy sleep pattern. And exactly as you said before, you're not going to be using caffeine to train at 10 p.m. at night, even though you might be training sometimes at 10 p.m. at night. But if it's a major match, major game, major fight, and it's at 10 o'clock at night, then yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you use caffeine and things that are legal to actually enhance your performance?
Just thinking about the other crazy uses of apps, Adam. We've spoken about this before. Maybe on the last podcast we might have spoken about this, but I know we've spoken about face-to-face when we were in Johannesburg a number of years ago. That's nearly 10 years ago. I think it was 2011. We were at.
Sounds right. That sounds right.
Adam and I were like 15 at the time. We were at kind of a conference talk, whatever it was, from International Council of Minerals, Metal, IPCA, which is oil and gas, OGP, in Johannesburg, and it was held and I was looking at fatigue risk management, and it was held actually at a casino. So most people were staying at the hotels at the casino. The conference was in the casino, dinners were in the casino. And I remember, we were sitting there, Adam, and he said, you said to me, do you know what time it is? And I was like, no. And he goes, and you were it's like 1:30 in the morning. But the way the lighting was and the sort of the activity, and it felt like it was 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And I was like, what? And it was something crazy, 1 o'clock or 12:30 at midnight, whatever. It was something crazy anyway. And I remember going, Jesus, this is so good. So the other thing is, Adam, could people use this app then to maybe identify periods of good time where they could go gambling? With a circadian variation in gambling, could they use it then for the best time, maybe to go out on the night out, have a few drinks? When would they be their sharpest? Maybe to chat up somebody. What's the kind of funny uses maybe people could use for peak alert?
I'm sure you're not shocked to hear I've never been asked this question.
Have you not?
Or anything even vaguely similar. No.
Really? You've never been asked this?
No. I think mainly because we're usually talking about, using it in a work context, and we're sort of going more into personal performance for non-work stuff at the moment.
So Adam, as you're pondering that, Adam, I'm going to give you the rationale behind my question is, and this will probably there's a paper about moral judgments and decision making after 56 hours of wakefulness. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have, but not for a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It got me thinking about people who would be very tired during the week from working, then will go out and sort of abuse alcohol, abuse drugs, maybe do something that they shouldn't have done, or say something they shouldn't have said. I got a list here of things that I'm regretful of in my early 20s, but all probably sleep and alcohol related too. So yeah, I'm thinking about like those type of things. Like, so that's my kind of, and I just think about the kind of the what's in it for them, what's the hook. Because some people you might get people to use it for a kind of a different reason, but who knows?
Yeah, look, I can't say we know for sure, but in theory, really anything that has a performance element, you could help optimize yourself. It could be that your performance is gambling, could be your performance is being good in a social setting and, trying to go out on dates that are engaging and enjoyable. Really anything that has a clear performance element. In theory, this could help you be in the zone when you need to be in the zone. Obviously, if someone's like moving their sleep timing a lot, that's going to limit what's possible. Whereas if you're on a really clean sleep-wake schedule normally, then your ability to then dial up performance on specific moments or specific periods is going to be a lot better than someone who's just already all over the clock. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get to that really peak performance.
Yeah. This is very interesting. And Adam, when we talk about performance, are we talking about cognitive or physical performance or both?
Look, the majority of the research that is behind all of this is about mental or cognitive performance. Obviously, over time, jobs are becoming less and less physical. And certainly in the military setting where this technology was developed, that's true. I mean, sometimes you're challenged with environmental factors like heat and humidity, especially if you've got a lot of personal protective gear, it's very hot and things like that. So there's a physical aspect, but mostly the research that sits behind this is about mental or cognitive performance in different dimensions. So it could be reaction time performance, it could be grammatical reasoning and skills that are needed for good quality communication and articulation. It could be mathematical and numerical calculation capability. So there's a lot of dimensions, obviously, to mental or cognitive performance. And the research that sat behind this really looked and explored a very wide range of those things. So we're talking about performance fairly broadly. But as a general rule, if your brain is shutting down or if your brain is impaired because of sleep deprivation or something else, it's a fair assumption that you're going to lose your vigilance and concentration, as well as your ability to communicate and articulate, as well as your ability to, monitor and solve complex problems. Like they kind of all go down the toilet, together, in broad terms. It's not quite that simple, but, broadly speaking, you can talk about performance.
Yeah. I just thinking, as you were saying, I was just thinking of other applications, high school kids trying to identify the best time to maybe study in the evening, get your best bang for your buck. So instead of like sitting there for 4 or 5 hours looking at a book, not knowing what's going on, you've got this window of 2 hours where it's going to be more effective, or you got an exam coming up. How do you kind of, sleep optimize and caffeine optimize prior to exam? Whether you're at school, university, or you're doing some postgraduate study, there's just endless uses for this app. And I think it's, like you said, it's whatever you define peak performance being or peak alertness being for you. Yeah. You can use this app either to assess yourself at that time or get ready for a specified period of time or look at periods where you can optimize over time as well.
Yeah, no, look, that's exactly what we've discovered this year as well. Like we've been quite pleasantly surprised at different groups or different areas of interest that have come out and started talking to us. So yeah, high performance for online gaming and esports, was something that wasn't on our radar, but now is. Definitely professional athletes and high performance sports training, another really big category. Anyone really in a 24-hour work environment, usually those are safety critical to some degree, heavier industries and things like that. That's sort of our obvious base. But yeah, esports, university studies, professional or serious athletes, they're kind of groups that we haven't talked to a lot up until this year. And because of this app and also just because of some other work we've been doing, there's really a little bit of convergence, from the things that were really important to keep people safe are actually really handy to try and optimize performance for the same people and optimize performance for other groups, depending on what they're trying to be optimal in. But it's something we're working on with a couple of other initiatives at the moment as well. And actually, there's a whole range of reasons why in the future we should be able to use relatively fun, simple tests to actually get a mental or cognitive performance monitoring on young school children, older school children, universities, staff, volunteers for a firefighting brigade. Like, there's really a very wide range of applications, and particularly for those people, like most of us, that choose to have caffeine as part of what we have, then this tool in particular is handy, because there's no other validated algorithm that actually allows for some personal caffeine input in a validated way.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So if you would like to check out Peak Alert or Fatigue Safe, you can go over to Adam's website, which is integratedsafety.com.au. All that information is there. It's also on the App Store for Apple. It's also on Google Play as well. Adam, you're on LinkedIn under Dr. Adam Fletcher if people want to connect with you there. If people want to get in contact with you, I suppose they can just go to the website and send an information there under the Contact Us.
Exactly.
And you got your all your information there. So Integrated Safety Support. You can follow Adam on LinkedIn. You have a business page on LinkedIn as well. So lots of information there if people want to get in touch. Adam, did I forget anything? Is there anything else you would like to mention before we wrap up today?
No, I don't think you forgot anything. The only thing I forgot to say, which I'll say now, is that, as I said before, the Fatigue Safe app is free to anyone who wants to use it. The Peak Alert app, there is a subscription, but if you just want to try it out, you actually can use the full app for free for 30 days. So you don't have to get a subscription just to try it out. There is actually a 30-day trial built into the app for free. So you basically can try it before you buy it effectively. And I didn't mention that before, but it's worth the listeners being aware of, because then they can just try it out for nothing. And if they think it's going to be valuable, then they can buy the fancy coffee, as you said, for 1 year subscription, and keep using it.
Yeah, like for $4.49 USD, it's like about $6. It's not that much, for a year, and if you can get to use it for work and it provides benefit, or if you want to use it for going out gambling, drinking, socializing, studying for exams, competing in a fight, playing a game of football, or maybe you want to do all of those things.
I was about to say, that sounds like a standard week for you, Ian.
I wish it was, man. Yeah, I'll be in bed at 7:30. Don't worry about that. The life and the energy I portray is quite different than what actually happens.
That's actually a relief to know. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, I'll be curled up at 5:30 on the couch tonight. Don't worry, I have to get up at 4:45. Adam, thanks very much for coming on. Really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best with the app in the future.
Thanks very much, Ian. Appreciate the opportunity to come on again, and wish everyone a safe and hopefully relaxing next few months until we can have a bit of a reset for 2021.
Oh, I'm not religious, but amen to that.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat, head pulled down over your eyes. Every part of you wants to surrender, but darling, you were meant to survive. With every start, we are born again. Open your heart and spend less time in your head. With every start, we are born again. Open your heart, spend less time in your head. Just like a seed in a garden, you will grow to be tall, staring out over miles of land without it, but wanting to build up walls. Lift me up in your branches, we can watch the sunrise. Just a couple of bruises souls that believe